Hi friends, and welcome to Just a Girl Made for Mission, where again we are looking to bridge empathy, share perspective, and spark hope. You are coming back to Motherhood, an honest look, part 2, which is now a 4-part series because there was so much love and so much honesty and vulnerability from these women that we had to give a little more space for their stories. And so it is now a 4-part series. Please know there is a labor of love behind all of these edits coming from Natalie Meyer. We're so grateful for her and all of her work behind the scenes that none of us see. So we're so grateful for her. But right now we want you to engage in these stories as you hear from Summer as she shares her heart in raising biracial kids in today's age. You'll hear from Natalie, Denise, and Wilma as they share their struggles and hopes in overcoming areas with their children with learning disabilities, depression, and substance abuse, real life stuff. From Amina as she shares her struggle in the loss of a child. And from Jen as she shares the heartache of being a foster mom and the loss of placements. And then from Bethany, who shares her road in recovery from having an abortion and her being a voice for life today. So these are real things that women from all spectrums of life endure, and we get to have a sneak peek window into their lives. And we're so glad that they are sharing with us an area that bridged and brought empathy into their lives. What is a defining moment that changed you or allowed you to grow empathy for yourself and or others?
So growing up, I had a relatively difficult childhood. Come from a broken home, lots of different things going on. Oftentimes, I think when we're victims of any type of abuse or struggle or challenge, we have a mentality that we had it so much harder than other people. And so when I started dating my husband, after about a year of dating, my mother-in-law sat me down and asked me why I would want to date him. Him obviously being Black and me being white. At the time, I, in my own ignorance, responded to her, I was made for this. I was always okay with being different. I felt like God had made me set apart. I was confident in who I was, and I kind of owned that. And so I wasn't worried about what the world could throw at me. So we get married, we have kids, and this is where the growing part starts to happen. Because even a couple days ago, my mother-in-law was talking to me about how what I meant is you didn't understand what you were asking for. You didn't understand the life you were asking for, and I didn't. I can't say that my life is harder today than it was as a child, but it's different. And the kind of hurt that I experience today is new. And so because of it, there's this continual growth, like ripping off a Band-Aid. And this started several years ago with the Trayvon Martin case, where for the first time, I see a young man that could be my son. My children start to experience discrimination at school. More recently, my son is 12, and he's probably the nicest, kindest boy you'll ever meet. He's experienced things that are just painful. And I had an eye-opening experience a few months ago because I realized that I don't know how to do this. It's not just raising a boy. It's not just raising a child who's a different color than me. I did that with my daughter, and she's relatively good in my own eyes, but she's female. So there's a sense of connection. And with my son, I don't have either. And so truly having to get to know who he is and struggling with the things that are thrown at him in this world that I have no idea how to cope with as a man, as a white person, as someone who can't possibly imagine these, and then we have these atrocities happen. Because whenever something like that happens, I see a white side where it could be any one of my family members. And I see a black side where it could be any one of my family members. And it's like I can physically see them waging war. And I don't know what to do. So I'd be lying if I said there was one incident that helped me grow, because I'm still growing. And it looks like that's probably going to be the process for the rest of my life. But I am grateful for it. And it has helped me to see that ultimately, if we can get to a place where we can stop thinking that our hurt and our pain is so much greater than someone else's, and just take the time to listen to their pain, that we'd probably be a lot better for it.
My son, David, who has Asperger's or ASD, autism spectrum disorder, he also has OCD. He just got diagnosed with that. And then also we're looking at mood disorder, possible bipolar. Basically, it started gradual since he was birthed. I started noticing things and I would just put it to the side. I wasn't ever thinking that I would ever raise a child with an issue like that. So I kind of just turned a blind eye. First of all, I wasn't even addressing it, so I couldn't help him really. I couldn't help him appropriately. Once I finally started realizing that there was some issues and coming to terms with that, and I remember just feeling I remember crying. When we got the diagnosis, I was driving, I was crying, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't I see this earlier? And I just started blaming myself. Because, you know, you come across people, kids with ASD or any type of other issues. That's a neurological issue, but any other type of mental health issues, because he does struggle with depression. He's 6, just turned 7, and has already said countless times that he wants to die, that he doesn't want to live. And it's very, very hard. Just to give you, like, this whole shutdown thing has been good because he hasn't been around people, so he's been a lot less anxious. But we went and met up with some friends at a park just 3 days ago, and he couldn't be there. He sat alone. He was at a swing by himself, and he kept coming up to me and said, my stomach hurts, I can't be here, I don't want to be here anymore. So it's very hard with him, and I have so much empathy for anyone who struggles with not only ASD or any other, that's a neurological thing, but anything mental health related. I have so much empathy.
One of the things that turned me to adoption, I work in alternative education, and there was this young man named Gabriel. And what I found out in working with him over time is that this young man came from 30 different placements. He'd been in foster care and group homes, 30. And so I vowed when I found that out, I vowed to myself that I was going to go into the county and adopt a child out of the foster care system, because I wanted to try and see if I could make a difference for just one of those kids, so they wouldn't have to, go through what Gabriel went through. So that was a huge defining moment for me as far as adopting. I always thought I had the answers. I always thought I had, I could always share with them different ways to handle kids with substance abuse issues, until I had my own child who had substance abuse issues. And it gave me the deepest understanding and empathy for those parents that are dealing with these kids that get out of control, that are just getting in trouble, that it's chaos in the home. And so many of us judge parents for this. And now that I'm one that has a son who has substance abuse issues, who went to the streets 2 days before he turned 18 years of age and ended up living homeless on the streets using drugs, I never thought that would happen to me. Never in a million years. And I have a whole different empathy for parents who struggle with those issues. It's a long story, but eventually he ended up getting into a drug treatment program. He's got 45 days clean and sober as far as the treatment program, and now he's 6 months in a sober living facility in Santa Ynez Mountains. And I'm just so blessed to have that. And God was what I turned to. God is who I turned to. He has saved me, and he has saved my son. I mean, when you talk about being a miracle worker, God has been a miracle worker in my son's life.
In my introduction, I had mentioned that I am the executive director of CASA, but prior to that, I had 25 years in education, and most of it's been in early care and education. I thought I had it together, right? It's like I am an early care and education expert. I know to read to my child and play the music, but what I wasn't prepared for was the depression that was set in after we lost a very close family friend. And it hit us to the core. And as adults, right, we have experienced loss. But for a child, that is new because it was a wake-up call in terms of mortality. And what I quickly realized is that we don't have enough resources for children with mental health issues. Specifically, in my case, it was depression. You would not expect Asian Clovis Unified two-parent home, a child who was just kind of cruising through life, for us to go, well, stop, wait, how do we do this? And having not enough doors even to open in our community, what is it that we're going to change so that parents and children do not have to go through it? We lean into God, because right, God has both her and us as mothers, and also to never give up on the child. At the same time, don't be a helicopter mom. The lesson learned in empathy, I learned it kind of late in life. You don't judge a person because you never know what they're going through right now. They're going to turn around and help you.
When I was 22, we got married. We knew we were going to wait to have children. And I surprisingly got pregnant at 23. I was in graduate school. I was very active in my church. I was working with children in the church. I was an Awana leader. And then I had a day job while I was in graduate school, and I worked at a private school. Shortly after I found that I was pregnant and got my appointment settled and got ready to go for my first ultrasound, I lost my baby. I didn't know how to go through that process. To decompress, you scroll through Instagram or Facebook. And I remember just having like this very visceral reaction to the pregnancy announcements and just people posting their babies on the internet, and like knowing that I had the potential to have a baby and it didn't happen. And then seeing that, it just broke my heart. Like, I just think so much about how many other people are probably sitting at home wanting a baby, and they have to go on the internet and see this like thrown in their face every time they're scrolling when they're just trying to have a moment to themselves. And so I didn't really share about my first miscarriage, and by the time the second miscarriage happened, it was actually exactly a year later when I had the second miscarriage. People don't know what you're going through, and you can choose to tell them, or you can choose to keep it private. And then even when you do have those joyful moments, like I had early on decided, like when I did get pregnant and it was going to be successful, I wasn't going to share it on social media. And I didn't. Nobody that didn't know me from like seeing me in person didn't knew I was pregnant. Like I may have had a conversation with you, like if it's a long distance friend, but I did not share anything on social media about my pregnancy. And actually, I was really glad about that. It made me realize how many other people are struggling with infertility and just desiring to have a baby, and it's not happening. Like I know the sadness of testing every month while you're waiting for your period and getting a negative result. I think for me, my empathy really grew in losing my own pregnancies, and then also the ability to hold back hurts for people by not oversharing. You're free to post what you want to post, but you have to be mindful of how that may impact your child later on and how they're going to have to grow from what you're sharing. And that's hard. That's not something we all have the humility to acknowledge in what we'd like to share. So
a defining moment, I think, was loving these biological parents that I've got to meet and experience time with, and realizing that, Jesus said to the woman caught in adultery, those who haven't sinned throw the first stone. And so I can't be the person throwing the stone at these women or moms that are struggling in their brokenness, because I'm just as broken. I might not be where they're at right now, but we're all human. We all make mistakes. And I think knowing that there was a man who died on the cross for my sins while I was still a sinner, to be able to love them through that and to gain empathy with where they are at.
Like the story to me leading up to being a mom is very messy, is kind of how I describe it, although it's kind of a beautiful mess, so I don't mind it at all. But I grew up in a Christian home. My parents tried really hard to shield us and protect us from what they experienced. At the age of 20, I got pregnant, and I was really immature and selfish, and a lot of the decisions I made, I grew up pro-life. So my plan was never to abort. Unfortunately, the person that I was with at the time, that was his plan from the beginning as soon as he heard about it. And it became a lot of back and forth. And he used that semi-broken relationship that I had with my own parents to convince me to get the abortion. So, he had said, your parents are going to kick you out. They're going to hate you. They're never going to want to talk to you again. And that was like the message that was constantly being played over and over and over again in my head. Out of fear, I had decided to get the abortion, and every single part about that day I remember, and it was 15 years ago, and there are things I do not remember from that point in my life, like at all, but that day, from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, I remember it. And my mom somehow, and I believe this was definitely by the grace of God, found out about it. And she knew about it the day before I went and got the abortion, but she didn't say anything. She wasn't sure if I had done it already. She wasn't sure about anything. She just didn't know what to talk to me about. And so the next night I was home, and I remember it was a Friday evening, and she had confronted me, and she had said, what is going on with you? Like, I know something's wrong with you. You're hiding something, you're not yourself, like something's off. And she just knew something was wrong, and she feared it was the abortion, but she wasn't sure, so she didn't want to come out and say me. And so all I did was lie to her, kept lying to her. So then my dad confronted me, and I lied to him, and I kept lying to them until I couldn't lie any longer, because my mom said, did you have an abortion? Just tell me, did you have an abortion? And I looked at her and I said, yes. And it was like all this brokenness that I had experienced, like my whole life in my parents' life, like came out, and it broke them. And I let it break them. And I think it broke them because they thought they failed as parents. But I knew that this decision was solely based on my own selfishness. I worked through that pain, and I got to a point where I was 100% okay talking to people about it, and I share it as much as I can. I would rather sit here and fight for the unborn than to wallow in my own self-pity because I killed an unborn. So I met my husband, and we got married. We decided we wanted to try having kids right away because we're both in our 30s. And we lost our first. We waited a little longer and we decided to try again. And we got pregnant with her a couple months after we started trying. I got on an app on my phone to look up the due date. So I started putting all my calculations in, and the due date comes out January 25th, 2018. I almost dropped my phone. It was the same day as the abortion, because that's the day that will forever live in my mind as her day or his day. I don't know what I was having, but January 25th was the anniversary of our abortion, and that ended up being my due date. And I called my mom and I told her what was going on. I said, Mom, this is God telling me, this is my atonement. I am forgiven. And he is promising me that this child is like his faithfulness to me. And it was like such a huge moment for me, like in my during this entire experience, 15 years of being okay with it, then beating myself down, then being okay with it, and then beating myself down. And finally was looking at that date and thinking, wow, like I've come full circle. Like, this is it. Like, God's finally telling me, like, no, I've always had this in mind for you. So I was just waiting for you to get to a point where you were ready to accept it. Now, Daisy was born a month early, so she never actually made it to that day. I'm actually kind of thankful, because to me that day is still really sacred. You know, I think about it every year. I guess put it into perspective that, like, there's no reason to carry shame even if you feel it every single day. Like, there's really no reason to carry it. But for me, I think being able to share it and tell people, like, don't make these decisions based on like what everyone around you wants you to do or what you think these expectations for your life should be. Like, make them for yourself. And even if you make a mistake, know that no mistake is too great for God's grace. I feel like I'm a walking testament to that. It doesn't define who I am, doesn't define me as a mom. It has become more of like a testament to how I got to where I am today than like a definition. That to me is like, I guess, where I have empathy is for people who are struggling, even struggling with loss. And I've had a lot of friends who struggle getting pregnant. All of these things combined together is just, it makes you so empathetic for women who want babies and women who have lost babies, regardless of the circumstances.
Wow, what incredible lives do we get to have the privilege to kind of have a sneak peek in. I'm so grateful for these women and for them sharing a part of their story with us. And I hope you will lean in with us in Motherhood Part 4 as they share something they're grateful for. Despite it all, they have really tremendous hearts, and I'm so glad we get to see that part as well.